On behalf of the Louisiana Center for the Book in the State Library of Louisiana, thank you for joining us for this virtual 2021 Louisiana Book Festival presentation. This program is entitled Ripped from the Headlines, Realistic Young Adult Fiction, with Jenny Torres Sanchez and Eric Smith. Jenny Torres Sanchez is a full-time writer and former English teacher. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, but has lived on the border of two worlds her whole life. She is the author of several novels for young adults. Her latest novel, We Are Not From Here, is a Pura Belpré honor book and has been described by the New York Times as a novel precisely for this moment. Eric Smith is a literary agent and young adult author living in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's worked on award-winning and New York Times best-selling books and sometimes tries to write them. His novels include The Girl in the Grove, Don't Read the Comments, You Can Go Your Own Way, and the anthology Battle of the Bands, co-edited with Lauren Gibaldi. Ladies and gentlemen, Jenny Torres Sanchez and Eric Smith.
Okay, I guess we just count off and then we go. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hey, all right. Hi, Jenny. How are you?
Good. How are you, Eric?
Awesome. I'm glad that we get to do a little virtual something for the Louisiana Book Festival. I'm
I know.
sad we're not hanging out because you are one of my favorite book people.
Oh, thank you. I know. I was so bummed. I was like, oh, this is so cool because, we have our mutual friend Lauren and we were all going to be there. It was going to be so cool. But this is cool too. So I'm glad we have this little panel together.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know you really well, but I don't know what everyone listening does. So can you introduce yourself and say a little something about your wonderful books?
Oh, thank you. So I'm Jenny and let's see. So I write young adult novels, and this is We Are Not From Here is my 5th young adult novel. It's this one right here, and it's about 3 migrant teens from Guatemala who are trying first to get to Mexico so that they can travel on La Bestia to the US southern border. And La Bestia is this incredibly dangerous train. I don't know if a lot of people know about it as I'm doing more of these talks, but it is a cargo train that goes from the southern part of Mexico all the way to the northern part of Mexico. And it's an incredibly, incredibly dangerous journey. And migrants who ride this train are really among the poorest and the most desperate to really, seek safety and kind of get out of their countries. So anyways, it's not a train made for riding. It's used to haul material, and the only way that migrants can ride it is by riding on top of it, which exposes them to all the elements, weather, rain, the blistering sun, all of those things. So it's really super, super dangerous. A lot of people fall to their death. A lot of people lose limbs. And when I heard about children riding on that train, I don't know, it like broke something in me, and it also made me angry. And I was like, I just don't feel that people really know what migrant children are going through, what many migrant children are going through. We see the news, we see, these 2-minute clips about what they're enduring a little bit, but it's made so small. And I wanted to take the space and the time to tell this story in a more in-depth kind of way to really make people understand. So that's what the book is about. Pulga, Pequeña, and Chico are the 3 characters you meet on this journey. And I'm really glad that it seems to be resonating with people and touching people's hearts. So
it is wonderful. And you said it's your 5th book?
Yeah, it's the 5th one.
Oh my goodness. What about your other books? What can you tell us a little bit about them?
I will. Thank you for asking about that. I will. So the first one is The Downside of Being Charlie. The second one is Death, Dickinson, and the Demented Life of Frenchie Garcia, which I know is a huge title, but I'm a big, fan of huge titles. So The third one is Because of the Sun, and the fourth one is The Fall of Innocence. And basically, they all deal with characters going through really hard times, through really, some difficult struggles. And I write those kinds of stories because I feel like teenagers are going through difficult things, and they need those books that kind of, I don't know, aren't going to sugarcoat things and are going to kind of like just be honest about the difficulties that it can be to be a teenager. Because a lot of times we think of certain problems as being adult problems and teenagers having the time of their lives, and that's just not the case. I mean, I taught high school, and I had a lot of teenagers who were going through really, really, really hard times, and I just think that books always help teenagers deal with those things, everybody deal with those things a little bit better.
No, absolutely. I feel like it's so important to like tackle difficult topics in ways that still give people hope when they're reading them,
Yes.
and you are just so good at that. I like even in your short stories. I mean, you had a story in this book in Battle of
I
the Bands,
do. Yes.
and it was just wild to me seeing you like bring all of that intense emotion and all of those just big feelings to something that was so condensed,
Oh, thank you.
how do you do that? I'm now curious because like, We Are Not From Here is a big book. The what is your fourth book with the duck on the cover with the little
Yes. The Fall of Innocence.
yeah, Fall of Innocence, that's a
Yes.
big book, right? You write like
Yes.
you write these chunky books that are just like
Yeah.
full of feelings. How do you make all those big feelings come across in something that's smaller?
Um, I don't know, Eric. No, I mean, I let the characters kind of have their moment of like really revealing everything and feeling everything and being allowed to feel everything and being allowed to really to get the reader to be in that struggle with the character. But I am very aware that, you know, that the audience they're young adults, they're teenagers, and I don't want them to feel that life is, so dark and so terrible. So I just have to put some sort of hope in there, even though I'm being very honest with my teenagers, and I am kind of like shining a light on what can be difficult. I want to make sure that I always leave them with a place of hope. So I think just, having those two things in my head, like honesty and hope, is kind of like how I'm able to, really delve into the darker things, but also make sure that readers see the light at the end of that tunnel. So, but
Absolutely.
I definitely, what you are writing about real life struggles as well. I definitely want to hear about your books. I don't want this to be the Jenny show here.
I know, but I'm so much more interested in you.
Aw, thank you.
uh,
But please tell us about your books, and what you write, what you feel drawn to write, and what you kind of see happening over and over again in your books, if you do.
yeah. I mean, well, so my latest book is Don't Read the Comments, which came out, oh goodness, like right before this whole pandemic thing started back in January of last year.
Mhm.
It's about two teenagers who are very invested in the video game community. One is a streamer who's like a little bit famous, and the other is a aspiring video game writer, so someone who wants to write scripts for video games. And they end up meeting one another in this massively multiplayer online role-playing game called Reclaim the Sun. And they start to form this friendship, and it's all very wholesome, and he's freaking out because she's really popular, and she's kind of apprehensive because he's like a dude on the internet and we're not really sure about him. And then it all comes to a head when she gets doxxed and trolled as a result of what happens to many people of color and women in the video game community. People come after you because they don't think you belong there. And it's about her navigating this situation where, what is it like when the place that's comforting and safe for you suddenly isn't a safe space anymore? And he's navigating trying to be an ally and not like overstep his boundaries. Like, does she want my help? Is it appropriate to try to help her when this isn't really my lane? And it's a book about friendship and allyship and, eventually romance, set in the gaming world. And I guess that's one thing I like to tackle a lot in my books is like geek culture and
Mm,
how it intersects with relationships. My book that comes out next month is a YA rom-com set inside a pinball arcade called You Can Go Your Own Way. And it's about two teenagers who used to be friends, are not friends anymore because their parents' businesses are rivals, and they
okay.
get snowed inside a pinball arcade together and have to reckon with all their feelings. And yeah, there's lots of video game stuff and arcade games and things like that in there, but it's also about the relationships between two people that have sort of drifted apart. So yeah, I don't know. I like digging into video games. I don't know what it is. It's they were such a big part of my life growing up, and I think and I'm curious how you feel about this, but I feel like when you're a really big fan of something, sometimes it almost feels like it's your job to be a little critical of it so it gets a little bit better,
Mhm.
and I mean that's really what Don't Read the Comments does. It's very critical of online gaming, even though I love online gaming.
Yeah.
I'm bad at it, I'm terrible at it, but I love it. But I don't love people, shouting horrible racist things at me, so
Right.
let's make it better.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think it's important to shine a light on those things, like in my book, I call out, that not only our government, turning their back on migrant children and not helping in any real way, and in fact causing damage to children, to migrant children. But I also, discuss the problems within, Latin America that also contribute to what migrant children are going through, and even though I love my culture and I love my people and all of those things, it's important to discuss those problems and not stick our head in the sand, because I think if we are part of that community, like you said, it's our responsibility to also shine a light on the things that are going on within that community. So, yeah. So, can you tell me kind of like what exactly inspired you to read, to write Don't Read the Comments?
Yeah, I wrote it in this really weird time where my wife and I had just moved away from Philadelphia and we'd moved to Virginia. And all of my friends were virtual. Like all my friends now who I'd known for decades were just online and in my phone. Uh, and around that time, this was what was last year? 2020 was last year. The book sold in 2018. So it was like 2017. Like Gamergate was just huge, it hit its head. And I was watching lots of friends in the video game community and particularly writers like disappearing from the internet because of these horrible people that were coming after them. And I kept thinking, I was like, what would it be like to have that space that you cherish so much taken away from you? Particularly when you're all by yourself and you're isolated. And
Mhm.
that's really where it came from. It was the idea that all of this is fragile and can be taken away by people who don't really care about you.
Yeah.
Um, and weirdly, You Can Go Your Own Way is kind of the same because I wrote it during the pandemic, and it was all about being far away from your friends and being closed off, and all the businesses that I wrote about in You Can Go Your Own Way, the real places, they're all gone. They all shut down over
Oh
the
my
year and a half.
gosh. Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah, it was wild.
heartbreaking.
It was
Yeah.
wild.
How did you handle writing during the pandemic? Because for me, I really, I don't feel like I get writer's block a whole lot. I feel like I kind of I can hit
Yeah.
I can get stuck, but overall I can get unstuck and find ways to get back into the story. But the pandemic is like, there were other responsibilities. My kids are learning from home. My littlest, I'm privileged enough to be able to homeschool her just because I freaked out about, no masks at school. But I have not been able to write at the pace that I was before. And I definitely feel like my creativity has been just kind of drained. And so I have seen and I have heard of so many authors and so many friends who have been able to write during the pandemic and like be super productive. And I'm in awe. I'm in absolute awe. I don't know how one does it. If somebody gave me a deadline right now, I think I would just, fall on a heap on the floor and cry. So how did you deal with that? And were there things that you did to help you along?
Yeah. So for that first chunk of last year, we didn't have childcare, right? It was just us and our toddler at home, and it was mostly me with the toddler at home.
Mhm.
Uh, and I do this thing, and I guess what made it a little bit easier is like what my writing process is like, where I'll take like a weekend and I'll write a whole rough draft. Like I'll write like a 60,000 word, 50,000 word, like terrible draft. And then I just spend months and months and months fixing it, and that's kind of what my writing process is. Like I get an outline,
Wow.
I write the whole book, and then I fix it for a long time. So with You Can Go It Your Own Way, I like wrote the whole book in March, and it was terrible. And I spent months and months and months fixing it until it was time to turn it in.
Yeah.
But it was really, I don't know, nerve-wracking because no one read it. No
Mhm.
one got to, like, there was no critique partners. Everybody's busy. Everyone's too busy. Everyone's, you know,
Yeah.
chasing their kids around. Like it's
Yeah.
impossible.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. People are getting it now. I hope they like it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
But yeah, that kind of writing process isn't for everybody. Like I
It's not,
don't
but like
recommend it.
now I'm like fascinated and super intrigued. Like usually I'm the kind of person, I'm very kind of like, okay, a morning writer. I'm going to write these, the first thing in the morning, the first 3 or 4 hours. And I can never just write a rough draft very quickly. Like my rough draft is the rough draft that takes like I don't even know when the first draft is done and the second draft and the third draft because I'm constantly kind of like working as I go along. But I'm so intrigued about this idea of writing like a whole rough draft, like super fast and like whatever comes out, comes out. And do you find it, have you tried any other way or?
Yeah, I mean my book before these was this book called The Girl in the Grove, and I wrote that took me 2 years to write the whole book.
Oh, wow.
Uh and that one was really hard because I was writing about adoption, and I'm adopted. I have lots of issues, and it took a really long time to dig that deep when it came to
Yeah.
that book. Um, so maybe that one was a little different. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you an outliner? Do you outline?
Um, no, no, not at
Oh
all.
no.
I'm a complete pantser. I wish
No
that
way.
yes, I wish that I could outline. I want to outline. I've tried it and it goes out the window after like, I don't know, just a few, even just trying to outline, I've broken things into parts and been like, okay, this is going to be part one, part two, part three. I'm just going to outline part one and it just doesn't work for me. I absolutely just have to see where the story leads me. A lot of times I don't even for like my first book, I didn't even know that Charlie was going to be my main character. It actually started from the point of view of this other girl. And as I started writing it more, I was like, this Charlie kid, he's kind of interesting. What's going on with him?
Oh.
And that's how it became his story. But I very much just, I mean, I think I could be more productive if I did it any other way, but I find it impossible. Impossible. So,
That is amazing. Well, we were talking about like the big issues that we like to write about, right?
mhm.
Like during the comments deals with like toxic masculinity and the video game community and racism. You Can Go Your Own Way is there's a lot of family issues in that
Yeah.
book, like teenagers who feel like they need to prove that they deserve to be loved is kind of the
Mhm.
thing that happens in that book. And then adoption in some of my other stories. What is the big topic that you haven't talked about yet, but you want to?
Ooh, that's good. I don't know. I am such a, I am so, I don't know. I write what I'm feeling and like the issues that I have dealt with as as a teenager, but in such a like incognito kind of way, because I am so like private, and I've always, been just that kid that didn't really say much, even within my own group of friends and my own circle. I was always kind of like more reserved and like, I don't know how much I want to talk about stuff. And so writing and writing for young adults really kind of like gave me the power to write about a lot of the things that I thought about and felt, and in all these different ways as a young adult, but do it in this very kind of like wrapped up in all these lies kind of way. um so that's what I do. I mean, I definitely see um like strains of truth through my writing of things that I've gone through and what I felt and whatnot. But I am so kind of like, but nobody can know this. And I, just like cover it up with a bunch of lies. And those are my books. I can't think of anything that I'd really, I love writing about music. And so I've tackled that. I was so happy when we were able to do Battle of the Bands, because I was like, oh, here I can kind of, geek out a little bit on that music part. Because at one point I wanted to write a novel that really the whole thing revolved around music. So I'm glad I got to do that in the short story. And sometimes I'm like, I really want to write something super, super joyful, and that's what I'm going to tackle next. But Eric, it never works out. I mean, I'm just drawn to the dark side, I guess, because I have tried to like, okay, my next novel is not going to be as dark, and it's not going to, kind of go back into those really hard feelings. But I guess that's my sweet spot, and it is where I feel comfortable, and it's where I feel comfortable writing from. So, but I do have a picture book coming out in 2022. And
Oh,
yes, it's called With Lots of Love, and it's coming out in English and in Spanish at the same time. So Con Mucho Amor also. And that was such joy. That book, picture books are magical, and being able to work on one during I didn't work on it exactly during the pandemic, but I was able to edit some of it and see the illustrations come in, and that was just really amazing. So I kind of feel like I was able to do my joy book as well, but it's a picture book. It's not a young adult novel.
it's exciting. You said something interesting there about writing these like dark topics and complicated topics, and how you feel comfortable there, right?
Yeah.
Like, what advice would you give a writer who wants to dig deep like that, um, and might not feel comfortable? Like how do you bring yourself into writing these sort of
Mm.
stories?
Yeah. I mean, I feel that if you really want to, all it requires is you just kind of trying and seeing what comes out. Um, I don't know. I do feel that you can be called to do that, and to feel like, I feel like this is where I can, do some good and be of service to our younger generation and whatnot. So I think that if that's something that you're thinking about, or something that you feel, like a lot of, I don't know, you have like emotion about, you feel for, then I definitely say give it a try. I think that you do have to take care of yourself as well, because writing those kinds of books can be really hard. I got very, very emotional, and was in some dark places as I've written all of my books. And so I think being able to step away and take care of yourself, and remind yourself of the beauty in the world, and the joy in the world, and the good in the world, is also really important when you're writing those books. So that then you can also put that in your books, and be that light for teenagers as well.
No, absolutely. I think self-care is so wildly important when you're Erin Bowman, right? The author.
Mhm.
She wrote
I don't know her personally, but
well, she has this great newsletter, and a couple of years ago she wrote this thing about mining your life, in
Mm.
your books. And I think about that all the time, because like minding your life is great, and it's a great way to like, I don't know, create something interesting from your experience. But
Yes.
man, you need that canary in that coal mine, right? To let you know that
Yeah.
it's maybe it's time to get out. You know, it's gonna be a little
Yeah.
hard. So yeah, have some writer
Absolutely.
friends. Have your pals that
Yes.
support you.
100%. And speaking of self-care, and I mean, I'm assuming, I guess, that you do this as kind of some self-care, but I know that you're an avid gardener like me. So has that helped you? Does that help you with your writing, or does it tie into your writing at all?
It ended up tying into You Can Go Your Own Way because the one character, Whitney's mom, owns a succulent shop.
Oh, very
So
cool.
it was a little wish fulfillment there because all the succulents are alive and they are not alive in my house. They
Succulents, Eric.
they're so
Succulents.
hard. They're so hard. Um, but yeah, no, like gardening is like a nice therapeutic, if frustrating, hobby that I pulled out of the pandemic. You know,
Yeah.
because I don't know, years and years and years ago, when I had my first BEA event, Nicola Yoon was there, right? And
Mhm.
she was giving advice to all these new writers, and she said, make sure you have something else. You know, when everyone was asking, oh, what do I do when it comes to my book? What do I do when it comes to my writing? Have something else. And I'm not very good at having something else. You know,
Mm,
like I work in the industry. I'm a literary
yeah.
agent during the day, and then I write books. So all I do is books, 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 books. So I was kind of forced to have something else last year, and like gardening was the thing, and I don't know. That's it, I guess, right? Like I have
Yeah.
video games, but like yeah, gardening was like the one like get away from everything thing. So it was a
Yeah.
good self care thing. What is your self
Yeah.
care thing? Gardening and
Gardening.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to do here in Florida, year round or semi year round. I don't know. I have this wishful thinking, like I shut everything down in the garden after, like, September, even though in Florida we could continue to grow, because
Mhm.
I like to pretend we have fall weather, um but no, I do. I garden because, and a part of it is because I write these, darker, harder issue books, is that is my way of reminding myself of, like, goodness in the world and beauty and things. There's a real joy in watching things, you know, come to life and sprout with life. And so
Yeah.
for me, it's a reminder of that kind of stuff, of the I don't know, the quiet beauty in the world. And so, uh, I just garden and I go out there and I look at flowers and I take pictures and I do photography, um, to kind of, for things not to be all about books and writing.
Mhm.
Um, I listen to music a lot, and do art and go to museums and stuff like that. But all of that feeds into writing also because I use it
Yeah.
all as inspiration. So.
Am I making this up that one of your characters, in one of your books, does photography?
No,
Why
that's
do I feel like
Charlie. Yeah, no,
that's
that's Charlie.
Charlie? I
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah, he's into photography, and then uh Frenchie in the second one is into, art and music and stuff. So, yeah, they're not me at all, Eric.
I think we ended up with a lot of good writing challenging topics advice in this, right? We have like
Yeah.
self-care, that it's important. We have minding your life, but also having a community to support you when you're doing
Mhm.
that. Uh, some challenges to like try not to be afraid because there's probably someone who needs it,
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One last question I wanted to ask you. Online gets such a bad rep, because it can get so toxic, and
Mm.
that's something that you address in your books. But what would you say are the pros of being online?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like the number one pro is finding that community, right? Like we talk about it as writers all the time, finding our book people on Twitter, finding our friends on Instagram. Uh, staying connected to people that might be a little further away than you
Yeah.
would like. I feel like that's what Instagram is the best for. Like I see my friends and their babies as I'm flipping through, and I love seeing all of that. And when you're a teenager, getting to see your friends who have maybe moved away or are starting college somewhere new, it's a great way to keep in touch and see what's going on there. Um, I don't know. Those are the big reasons that I stay online. Like I would
Yeah,
love to delete Facebook, but
I
without
know.
it, how am I gonna know what that second cousin who doesn't talk to me is doing? Like I need to
Right.
know.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, there have definitely been times that I've wanted to just, like be off the online grid and be like, I'm just going to disappear and I'm not going to do anything. But, I would miss the community and knowing what's going on within our bookish community, and being informed of that and the friendships that I formed there. So yeah, I think all the things that you mentioned, as well as, even though the pandemic has been terrible in so many ways, one thing that I really appreciate is being able to have these virtual events, because it does make it accessible to people who maybe otherwise wouldn't have attended or been able to
Oh, yeah.
attend festivals and workshops and all of that good stuff. So
Oh yeah.
um,
I hope they continue like trying to keep them accessible.
yeah, definitely. So, well, I think that we have chatted away here.
Yeah, I
And
know.
this has been super cool. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do this. So,
No, I agree. It's always great to see you. And like I'm still holding out hope that there will be like a co-written book between you and like Lauren Gibbledy that is just like Lauren's like wholesome sunshine pages, and then it's just like the darkness and the challenging stuff. And it would just
I
it would
know,
it
I
would
know.
be such a trip, I
I
think.
have told her, like, oh my gosh, we totally need to work on something together. And you can just be that like ray of light, and I can just be like the doom. Like we always joke around that we're like Raven and Starfire, because she is so just like, yay, everything's awesome. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day I would love to do that. Never know.
Awesome. Well, thanks for chatting with me. And
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for watching this presentation of the virtual 2021 Louisiana Book Festival. Please visit our official bookseller, Cavalier House Books, and receive 20% off all featured festival titles through the end of the year. A special thank you to our festival sponsors. The Louisiana Book Festival will return on October 29th, 2022.